Welcome to the 21 Lines of Inquiry podcast that's all about helping you discover your UCW, your unique contribution to the world. Join us as we delve into the 21 questions that will help you be more intentional about bringing your gifts into your career and your life overall. So when you're ready, let's get started. Hi, it's Anita, and in this episode, I want to switch the focus of your attention to the outer world and invite you to consider what needs you notice there and which of those you feel most drawn to meet or respond to in some way. So the reason this is important is because your UCW always involves contributing to something beyond your own self and serving the world in some way. There's a great research paper that talks about this and the psychology of purpose created by the John Templeton Foundation, and I'll put a link to this in the notes to this episode. But the question I want to consider here is how. How, when there are so many needs in the world today, and given we each have a finite amount of time and energy, how do you even start to think about this? So at this point, I want to share a quote from Michael Meade, the American mythologist and depth psychologist, because he says this: "Our job is not to comprehend or control everything, but to learn which story we're in and which of the many things calling out in the world is calling to us. Our job is to be fully alive in the life we have, to pick up the invisible thread of our own story and follow it where it leads." Now, I love this quote because it acknowledges that there are indeed many things calling out in the world to us, but it reframes the question of responding to these needs from an endless task list to a joyful endeavour, a kind of participation in the symphony of life, if you like. So here's how I like to think about this question for myself, and it involves 3 circles expanding outwards from me in the middle. So in the first circle, the one closest to me, I start by noticing my own needs. Now, I used to think it was selfish to start here, but over the years I've come to realise, often in painful ways through not doing this enough, that if I am not taking steps to replenish my own energy and meet my own needs, then it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to contribute to the needs of the world in a healthy or sustainable way, and I may end up feeling burnt out or resentful if I try. So just to give you an example here, I find that if I don't go out for my daily walk in nature every day, I notice a considerable reduction in my bandwidth to handle, even the ordinary stresses of the day. And yet I have to really make an effort some days to make this happen. So that's the first circle. Then the second circle is the needs of others who I am in a relationship with in some way. Now, of course, I realise that at one level, this is everyone on the planet, as we are all interdependent. But in this circle, I focus on the people immediately closest to me in my environment. So my family, my friends, my work colleagues, who sadly are mostly hybrid now, so we may not be geographically close, and other people that I know in my neighbourhood and local community where I live. And what I sometimes find tricky here is setting the appropriate boundaries so that I can manage the sometimes conflicting needs that arise. Now, sometimes that's between home and work, but it can also be between my own needs and those of others. And this is an ongoing process that I need to continually manage. So that's the second circle. Then the third circle is the needs of the wider world. And this topic is enormous. It's so vast. And so sometimes I like to think of these using a framework, such as the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, because this helps me to think about the work I do and how that's helping to contribute towards shaping a better and more sustainable future for all. So when it comes to the the Career Intelligence Academy work, for example, I like to see that as contributing to the UN Sustainable Development Goals number 3, 4 and 8, as it's all about equipping people with the competencies they need to create meaningful work, as well as making an economic livelihood. And I'll put a couple of links to the Sustainable Development Goals in the notes too for you to have a look at if this interests you. So what about you? Take some time now to think about what needs of the world you feel drawn to respond to at this time, whether in your work or just your life overall. So, for example, you might want to think about what is moving you emotionally at the moment. Sometimes the things that make people sad or angry can be a prompt here, but not always. You might also want to consider where life might be calling you to respond in some way, even if that need had not been on your radar. So, for example, I remember being asked if I would serve on the chapter, which is the governing body of our local cathedral recently. And my initial thought was, oh no, I'm not naturally a committee person and I've got a lot on. But as I reflected and discerned why this call may be coming now, I realised that actually this is something I have the skills to contribute to, and I can at this moment make some time. So like that, you may have things that life is calling you to do at the moment, and you may want to consider and see if they are possible for you at this time, even if your initial reaction is not to necessarily want to or feel drawn to doing them. And then finally, just remember it's absolutely fine and indeed essential to say no to certain things at certain times, to honour and to protect your own priorities and boundaries. So give some thought to what needs may be calling you now that you need to say no to, maybe to protect your own energy or mental health, or to wear your own oxygen mask first. So take some time to do that, and when you're ready, I'll see you in the next episode.